There is a moment, somewhere off the southern coast of Greece, when the light hits the water at just the right angle, and you can see it. A grid. Straight lines running beneath the surface, too regular to be natural, too deliberate to be anything other than what they are. Streets. Not carved by currents or shaped by coral, but laid down by human hands, in a town where people lived and worked and raised children and buried their dead. That town is still there. It has been there for nearly 5,000 years. But no one lives in it anymore. No one has lived in it for a very long time. The sea moved in, and the people moved out, and at some point the memory of the place simply dissolved, the way salt dissolves in water completely and without a sound. We tend to think of cities dying in dramatic ways. We picture fire or invasion or some great and sudden catastrophe. Pompeii buried under volcanic ash in a single afternoon. Hiroshima flattened in a flash of light. These are the destructions that stay in our collective memory because they are violent and sudden vivid stories. But there is another kind of disappearance, one far more common throughout human history and far less discussed. It is the slow kind. The kind that happens over decades or centuries so gradually that the people living through it may not fully understand what is happening until the water is already at their doors. Some cities did not fall. They were swallowed inch by inch, tide by tide. And the ocean, unlike an invading army,
This is the dry, rocky coastline
to
of
understand
Laconia
how
in
this
the southern
happens and how
Peloponnese.
often it has happened, we need
Just
to go to
offshore, the
specific
ancient
places,
submerged
real
city of
places where the
Pavlopetri
evidence
rests beneath
is
the
not
waves.
theoretical, but physical,
Coastline
sitting
appears
on the
stable
seabed
from this
waiting.
vantage.
Let us begin with
Wait, what's that on the
Pavlopetri
bottom?
because it is the oldest and in
Looks like a
some ways
structure.
the most
I need to get
unsettling.
closer.
It lies just off the coast of Laconia in the southern Peloponnese
Sector
of
clear.
Greece,
Moving to next
submerged under
Copy
roughly
that.
3
Photogrammetry
to
online.
4 meters of
Visibility good.
water.
Proceed to
It
central
was first
complex.
noticed in
Data syncing.
1967 by
High-resolution
Nicholas
confirmed.
Fleming, a British oceanographer who was surveying the coastline, and realized that the stone formations he was looking at on the seafloor were not geological, they were architectural. Subsequent surveys, particularly those conducted by a joint team from the University of Nottingham and the Hellenic Center for Marine Research beginning in 2009, used digital photogrammetry and sonar mapping to produce a comprehensive picture of what lies beneath the surface. What they found was a planned settlement, streets laid out in a rough grid, building foundations with clearly defined rooms and tombs, a settlement that dates in its earliest phases to approximately 3000 BCE, with continued habitation through the Mycenaean period roughly until 1000 BCE. This is not a shipwreck. This is not a single structure that fell into the sea. This is an entire Bronze Age town with a layout that suggests a functioning community, a place with social organization, trade, and daily routine. What makes Pavlopetri particularly significant is its age and its completeness. It is widely considered the oldest known submerged city in the world, and it did not vanish because of a tsunami or a single earthquake. The geological evidence points to a gradual process of tectonic subsidence combined with post-glacial sea level rise that over centuries brought the waterline higher and higher. The people who lived there would have noticed eventually the shoreline creeping closer, the lowest buildings becoming difficult to use. Perhaps a storm surge one season that reached farther than any storm surge before. At some point they made the decision to leave, or perhaps the decision was made for them generation by generation as the habitable area simply shrank until there was nothing left to hold on to. Now consider a very different place in a very different part of the ancient world. Thonis-Heracleion sat at the mouth of the Nile on the Egyptian coast in what is now the Bay of Abu Qir. For centuries, it was one of the most important port cities in the Mediterranean. Greek historians wrote about it. Herodotus mentioned it. It was the gateway to Egypt for ships arriving from across the ancient world, a place of customs and commerce, of temples and taxation. And then at some point it disappeared so thoroughly that for a long time serious scholars debated whether it had ever existed at all. Some suggested it was a literary invention, a place that lived only in texts. It was not. In the year 2000, the French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot and his team located the ruins of Thonis-Heracleion beneath approximately 10 meters of water several kilometers off the present-day coastline. What they found over the following years of excavation was staggering colossal statues of pharaohs, a temple dedicated to the god Ammonius, gold coins, bronze vessels, more than 60 ancient shipwrecks, inscribed steles that confirmed beyond any doubt that this was indeed the lost city described in ancient texts. The scale of the discovery was enormous, and it continues to expand. Excavations at the site are still ongoing, still producing new findings. The cause of its submersion is complex and multi-layered, as you might expect from a city built on the shifting sediments of the Nile Delta. Research points to a combination of factors. The city was built on unstable clay and sand prone to liquefaction. Where saturated ground loses structural integrity during seismic events, there is evidence that earthquakes triggered widespread liquefaction, causing large sections of the city to sink rapidly into the waterlogged ground. But this was not a single clean event. Before those earthquakes, the city had already been dealing with slow subsidence, gradual sea level changes, and shifting river channels. After the seismic events, the process continued. The Mediterranean kept rising, the land kept settling, and what had once been a thriving port became over centuries a place that existed only in old books. Then there is Dwarka, off the coast of Gujarat in India. This one carries a weight that extends beyond archaeology. Because Dwarka is deeply embedded in Hindu tradition, the ancient texts describe it as the kingdom of Lord Krishna, a magnificent city that was ultimately consumed by the sea for a long time. This was treated as mythology, as a religious narrative rather than a historical claim. But beginning in the 1980s, underwater explorations documented stone structures, walls, and what appeared to be a planned settlement submerged beneath the Arabian Sea. The interpretation of these findings remains debated. Some researchers believe the submerged structures date to around 1500 BCE, while others propose much older dates. What is less disputed is that there are man-made structures beneath the water, and that the coastline of Gujarat has changed dramatically over millennia due to tectonic activity and sea level fluctuations. Whatever Dwarka was, the sea took it, and the manner in which it was taken, not in a single catastrophic wave, but through gradual geological and hydrological change, follows a pattern that now should feel familiar, because this is the pattern. It appears again and again across the ancient world in places with no connection to one another, no shared language, culture, or religion. The specifics differ, but the underlying mechanics are remarkably consistent. A city is built near the coast, or on a river delta, or on a low-lying island, because that is where the advantages are: access to trade routes, fertile soil, fresh water, and the ability to move goods by boat. These are rational decisions. These are the decisions that built civilization, and then slowly the ground beneath the city begins to change. The sea rises, the land sinks, the river shifts its course, the sediment compresses. None of this happens overnight. It happens across generations in increments so small that no single year looks meaningfully different from the year before. And by the time the cumulative change becomes undeniable, the city's fate is already sealed. The mechanisms behind this are well understood by geologists and climate scientists. Sea level rise in the ancient world was driven primarily by the long tail end of the last glacial period, when massive ice sheets melted. Global sea levels were approximately 120 meters lower than today. The rise was not steady. There were pulses, periods of rapid melt, when sea levels increased dramatically within a few centuries, and also periods of relative stability, but the overall trend was upward. And for settlements built during stable periods, the next rise eventually arrived, changing coastlines forever. Tectonic subsidence is another factor in regions like the eastern Mediterranean, the Nile Delta, and western India. The Earth's crust is dynamic, rising in some places and sinking in others. A city built on a subsiding coastline is effectively being lowered into the sea. Even as the sea rises from above, coastal erosion adds another dimension. Waves, currents, and storms constantly reshape the land. Harbors become unusable, coastlines retreat, and in delta environments where sediment shifts continuously, cities exist in a fragile balance. A city on a delta is in many ways a city built on borrowed ground. What is striking is how much we still do not understand about the exact timelines of these submersions. We know cities were occupied for centuries and now lie underwater, but we do not know precisely how quickly the final abandonment occurred, whether it was gradual over generations or triggered by a sudden tipping point. Underwater archaeology is difficult. Organic materials decay, sediment buries structures, marine organisms alter surfaces. The evidence becomes fragmented, and sometimes the most honest answer is that we simply do not know exactly how it happened. This uncertainty extends to distinguishing between gradual and sudden events. A building destroyed in an earthquake and later submerged may appear similar to one that slowly sank over time. Separating these scenarios requires careful analysis and often leads to probabilistic conclusions rather than certainty, and this leads to a deeper question: why do humans continue to build in places the ocean will eventually claim? The answer lies in the advantages coastal locations provide: trade access, resources, connectivity, and power. These benefits have always outweighed long-term risks in human decision-making. This creates a paradox. Gradual submersion operates on a timescale that is difficult for humans to perceive. It is too slow to trigger immediate action, yet too fast to be ignored. Over centuries, humans are good at reacting to sudden threats and understanding deep history, but we struggle with long-term gradual change. This blind spot is where many of these stories unfold, and where ancient patterns begin to echo into the present. Today, global sea levels are rising at an accelerating rate, measured at around 3.5 millimeters per year. Climate projections suggest significant increases by the end of this century. These numbers may appear small, but for low-lying coastal cities, they are transformative. Jakarta, for example, is sinking rapidly due to groundwater extraction, with parts of the city subsiding by several meters.
Yes, but what about the environmental zones? We've integrated them. See the buffer zones here.
And the road networks? Any congestion risks?
These spices from the east are the finest!
I'll take 3 measures. What's the price?
Hoist the sails, we're casting off soon. A fair price for quality goods.
These ruins have been submerged for centuries, yet they remain remarkably intact. The water offers a unique perspective, revealing details hidden from the past.
An Earth observation satellite orbits above the ocean. It sends radar pulses downward, which reflect off the water's surface. The round-trip time is used to calculate the sea level height. The IPCC projects temperature rises of 1.5 to 4 degrees by 2100 under different scenarios. This next chart shows sea level rise up to 1 meter, highlight the need for urgent global action. Beneath Jakarta's streets, industrial wells pump relentlessly. Submersible pumps force water from deep aquifers. This hidden extraction is the cause of the city's subsinking, 1 liter at a time.
Keep it steady, watch the edge! Clear the path, drop in! Good pace, secure that rebar now!
Ancient ruins slowly reclaimed by the waters of time. The pattern repeats in modern Jakarta as floods rise again, a cycle of water's power enduring across ages. Rising seas threaten Miami. These massive pumping stations are a bold defense. They work around the clock, expelling water to protect the city, a high-stakes battle against the encroaching ocean.
The routes converge on Alexandria now! Make way! More cargo from the sea!
Tie off! The holds are full!
Done. A prosperous trade.
The weather's perfect for a chat.
It really is. How's the family?
I'm good. We played soccer.
Sounds fun. We should do a block party. That's a lovely idea.
The sea rises. We must act.
The waters encroach. The gods warn us.
Nonsense. The sea is always restless.
Look! The waves are higher than before!
We must fortify the shore now.
Ancient submerged ruins on the seabed. Not relics of ignorance, but evidence of an ongoing pattern. The same ancient conversation beginning again worldwide.